Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis. Joined as always with my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. And it's draft season. And what would draft season be without the man who I think is on every single night this week, Kendall Mursky? You can find him on Twitter at Mursky Kendall. Together, we are the Bills guys. This is the Air Raid Hour presented by the Cover One Sports Network and Picasso's Pizza. They are the flagship sponsor of this show. Head on over to picassospizza.net. There are 4 great Western New York locations: Williamsville, West Seneca, Blaisdell, Lancaster. You can again call or visit picassospizza.net. Old school delivery, DoorDash, depending on the distance. And if you're out of towner like the 3 of us, you can still get that great Buffalo style pizza delivered to your door. I'm talking that cup and char pepperoni by ordering online. And again, that website is picassospizza.net, and they are the flagship sponsor of this program. I guess you could call that a program. I guess I think we've earned the right to call this a program here.
We're a program.
Justice, appreciate this as always. Comes in and says the Air Raid Hour is elite. Thank you. We appreciate that. And you know what, guys? A lot of stuff in the news today, but I think we got to spend the first half hour, 45 minutes on Tiger Woods, right? Like that's got to be what we
had a nice day today.
Anything else that needs to be talked about in Bills world? Obviously, of course, a lot of Bills news that we're going to get to tonight. We're going to start with the Stefon Diggs news, even though I know it was covered last night at length. We're just going to touch on it a little bit. I have a different sort of take and a different sort of approach and a conversation I want to have with you guys, and we'll bring that up in a second here. Obviously, we want to get to the Jordan Poyer news of him signing a new agent and possibly wanting a new contract. And then we'll get into some pre-draft visit talk, and we'll get into safeties and linebackers, because with this Diggs extension, with this Jordan Poyer conversation, with the list of pre-draft visits, it seems like maybe linebacker and safety is a much more interesting conversation and a much lengthier conversation than maybe we would have thought 2 months ago. Who would have known if somebody would have had a safety mocked to the Buffalo Bills in the first round in January, fans would have been losing their mind. If you would have mocked a linebacker to the Bills in the first round in February, Bills fans would have been losing their mind. Now, not the craziest thought in the world, and we're going to get to that tonight when we break down linebacker, safeties, talk about where the best value is, what players we like the most, and the earliest we would take players at each position. But let's start with the Stefon Diggs news. Obviously, Stefon Diggs signing a new contract extension with the Buffalo Bills, locking him up for a total of 6 years, says he's going to retire a Buffalo Bill. That's what he and his family wanted to do. Trayvon was in town because obviously he wants to be traded to Buffalo as well, but we'll save that conversation for another day. I saw a tweet, and this tweet was from Ted Wynn of The Athletic, and it really stuck out to me, and this is what I want to sort of use as a conversation starter to sort of differentiate with the conversations that Greg and Aaron and Anthony were having yesterday with you, Kendall, and that's this. So this is the tweet from Ted Wynn of The Athletic. The Bills decided to extend their number 1 wide receiver to pair with their demigod quarterback, and Kansas City decided to go with cap space to help the team elsewhere and to put more on the shoulders of their demigod quarterback. Not taking sides, but it'll be interesting to see how both approaches end up. So, Dave, I'm going to start with you. Which approach do you prefer? Because we got guys like Tremaine Edmonds and Jordan Poyer, whose future is in the Buffalo Bills uniform beyond 2023 is now in question because of this extension. Who do you side with here? The Kansas City Chief approach? You know, we've seen the Chiefs and the Packers walk away from their alpha wide receivers. Did the Bills make the right decision in extending Stefon Diggs when there are a number of other players with expiring contracts coming up that we may be at risk of losing? What do you think?
Well, let's not pretend that Patrick Mahomes didn't have Tyreek Hill for basically for his entire 4 seasons that he started for the Chiefs before this season upcoming, right? Like Patrick Mahomes, was drafted in 2017, same draft as Trey White, right? Didn't start until 2018. And Tyreek Hill was an all-pro in 2 of those seasons. So 4 seasons that Patrick Mahomes had Tyreek Hill at his disposal. This is now going to be the 3rd season upcoming that Josh Allen has had Stefon Diggs at his disposal. And also, I think the decision is a little bit easier for the Chiefs much like we saw the Seahawks kind of go this route a little bit with Russell Wilson when they started kind of somewhat gutting that roster. We have to remember the Chiefs have already won a Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes at the helm, and they've been to another, right? So
Mhm.
in my mind, you've kind of reached the mountaintop already with Patrick Mahomes, and you are now just kind of reloading and retooling for him. The Bills, to me, right now are on the trajectory of trying to get to the mountaintop, and Stefon Diggs is now going to going to be in his third year upcoming with Josh Allen at the helm. So while on the surface it may seem like timing wise, okay, the Chiefs are going one way, the Bills are going another. In actuality, I think the trajectories are somewhat similar, and it just happened to be when contracts were sort of like due or upcoming, because you have to remember the Chiefs did give Tyreek Hill a big contract a couple years back, and now they've
Mhm.
decided to trade him, right? So they did go that route with Tyreek Hill, and now they've decided to trade him later on. The Bills are going that route now with Stefon Diggs by giving him the big contract. Now we don't expect him to be traded, and it would be very surprising
Mhm.
if he were, but it's not all that different. It's just timing wise where Tyreek Hill is now in the contract he had. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs have already won a Super Bowl with him. They need the draft picks. They're trying to reload, whereas the Bills are still on the ascent, in my opinion, and trying to get that
Mhm.
ring with Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen combination. If the Bills were to win a Super Bowl within the next couple years, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that later on you see that it's at least talked about. Now,
Mhm.
not expecting it, no one really is, but that's all I'll say.
We got by chance coming in saying, I like extended Diggs, but not for that long. I will say the number one thing is I think a receiver like Stefon Diggs, I think he ages better than maybe a receiver like Tyreek Hill. Like Tyreek Hill is
I would agree
literally
with
like
that. I would agree
known
with
for
that.
his speed, right? So a guy like Stefon Diggs wins in different ways, and I think a receiver like Stefon Diggs is going to age a little bit better. So the length isn't too concerning to me, at least not yet. Kendall, what are your
Nope.
thoughts? You look at the Chiefs approach, you look at the Packers approach, trading their alphas who were due for a payday, and you look at sort of the Bills approach. Which way are you leaning? If you were the Buffalo Bills, would you have given Stefon Diggs this extension, or would you have possibly tried to wait it out and keep him on that cheap deal and risk rubbing him the wrong way, or would you have tried to deal him like the Chiefs and the Packers have traded their superstar wide receivers? What are your thoughts on this?
I think this is a smart move by Brandon Bean. I think it makes sense. And I think what the Chiefs did and what the Packers did made sense for them. I just think, especially like Tilt, like you said, with the success that the Chiefs had, they're kind of just going about it in a different way now. Now that they've won the Super Bowl and they've gotten there, they kind of just have to retool, like you said, to maneuver the cap in a different way and still keep the core of the team, but kind of maneuver who's that A tier of the core. They're gonna now have to shuffle someone up into that A tier with Kelsey and Mahomes to replace
Mhm.
Hill at that top of the mountain for them. But with the Bills, let's not forget, like, the Bills didn't become elite until they got Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs is part of that cream of the crop core that the Bills
Mhm.
have. So you want to make sure you keep that as a part of this winning formula to keep it sustainable moving forward. And then in terms of longevity, I mean, we know how Brandon Bean builds these contracts, especially the way he built a contract with Von Miller. It's a way where you can guarantee that you get some good years from him up front, but you build yourself an out halfway through it. And I'm not saying he did the same thing with Diggs, but I'm sure he was smart enough to, obviously what he did was he extended Diggs because it kicked the can down the road, because he knows Diggs is a
Mhm.
core member of this team. I'm confident kicking the can down the road with a guy like Stefon Diggs for the reason, like you said, Judge, he's going to age gracefully because of his skill set at the
Mhm.
position. And then furthermore, it opens up cap space this year, probably a little bit next year. And then once the cap really starts to hit a little bit more, I'm sure it's right when that TV deal money is going to be coming in. So
Mhm.
I'm sure it was a great move by Brandon Bean to keep a core member of this offense and a core member of this team. Let's not forget, he wore the C on his chest this year. He's a big part of this team, the culture that they've grown in Buffalo. So I love this move. I think it makes a lot of sense. And then everything he's said about, I want to retire in Buffalo, and this was a great move for me. It sounds like it was the best move for both parties. And like you alluded to, Judge, if you wait a little bit longer, you don't want to rub him the wrong way.
Yeah.
He's a big part of this team, and you don't want to do that to the culture and the emotions in the locker room.
And you know what? Like, obviously, I don't think the Chiefs, I don't think Patrick Mahomes has really weighed in on the Tyreek Hill thing, but I look at a team like Green Bay and the way that they sort of, I don't want to say they turned Aaron Rodgers into what he is, because I think Aaron Rodgers was maybe always trending that way. But, Stefon Diggs said it today. Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs are best friends. Emmanuel Sanders is joking about how they each have shrines built, to each other in each other's lockers. Like, the Buffalo Bills and Brandon Beane made this move, I think, in part to make Josh Allen happy. I legitimately think that Josh Allen played a large role in the decision to re-sign Diggs. I think that if they went to Josh and said, listen, Josh, we're leaning towards paying, Jordan and Micah again, and we want to re-sign Tremaine. We're thinking about doing what Kansas City and Green Bay's doing with Stefon. I think Josh Allen would have been like, no. I literally think like, listen, you do you, but I won't be happy about it. I'm putting words in Josh Allen's mouth. This is complete conjecture, but I legitimately think that might have, something about it. Cause you look at Green Bay. When Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers were really rolling, it was Jordy Nelson, who they used a 2nd round pick on, Greg Jennings, 2nd round pick, James Jones, 3rd round pick, Randall Cobb, 2nd round pick, Devontae Adams, 1st round pick. They were investing in wide receivers, and Aaron Rodgers was just fine in Green Bay. And then all of a sudden they just stopped. They literally just stopped investing in the wide receiver position. And
don't forget, they drafted Devontae Adams when Jordy Nelson and Greg Jennings were still there. I think Jennings might have still been there. But either way, Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb were still there. And remember, Devontae Adams had drops issues early in his career there, but they stuck with it. They invested in the position, and look what it turned out to be.
And after Devontae Adams came in, the only real capital they've invested in the wide receiver position was Amari Rodgers, a 3rd round pick. And then they've just sort of scattershot a bunch of late round picks and UDFAs around Aaron Rodgers. And it led to, I believe it really led to some of the friction in Green Bay. Like, the running joke is they never take wide receivers in the 1st round. Like, they're allergic to it. Year after year, people mock a wide receiver, the Green Bay Packers in the 1st round. Never happened. So I think keeping Josh Allen's main weapon, I think was really important. I think this will help keep from leading. I don't think Josh Allen is wired in the same way as Aaron Rodgers, but I think it will lead to less any possible friction down the road. I think it'll lead to less of that. And sort of offensive weapons versus defensive players is sort of the hot topic of our next segment here, because the next thing I want to talk about here is Jordan Poyer's future. So the day that Stefon Diggs' contract extension was announced, you saw sort of an early ripple effect in the morning in the name of Rachel Bush, because apparently Bills fans just can't be happy for more than 10 minutes. Rachel Bush started tweeting and then deleting things such as, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I want my man to be paid like what he deserves to be paid. He's been taking pay cuts. It's time for him to get his. All of these, I'm paraphrasing a bunch of her now deleted tweets. And then later that day, Jordan Poyer announces a new agent in Drew Rosenhaus. So between Mrs. Poyer's tweets and between the announcement of a new agent a new agent in Drew Rosenhaus, who the Bills actually do have a pretty decent relationship with, it appears like Jordan Poyer is unhappy with his contract and would like more money. There are 2 scenarios in which I see playing out here, and I want to run these 2 scenarios by you. And then I want to get your guys' take. I think there are really two different ways this could play out. I mean, number one is the Buffalo Bills could want to pay Jordan Poyer long-term. It could have been their intention this entire time to give Jordan Poyer a new deal. And within the next couple of days, weeks, months, the Buffalo Bills and Jordan Poyer might work out a nice little pay bump, and everyone will be happy, and this story will have been nothing. But the other scenario that comes into play now that Stefon Diggs has been extended is, what if the Buffalo Bills plan with Jordan Poyer was to burn and churn him, and that this was the last year that the Buffalo Bills were going to utilize the services of Jordan Poyer. They wanted to get one more year out of him, the Super Bowl run, and then move on next year, either with a guy they've been grooming behind him that they draft or with a free agent or a draft pick next year. And if that's the case, if the Buffalo Bills are looking to get out of Jordan Poyer, are not looking to extend Jordan Poyer, that could lead to a little bit of tension come to training camp. If they're not willing to give him a pay bump, if they're not willing to give him an extension, things might get a little ugly, especially knowing who his wife is and how she likes to voice her opinions on social media. Kendall, I'll start with this one with you. What are your thoughts on this Jordan Poyer situation, and what do you think his future is with the Buffalo Bills?
I think both scenarios you laid out are equally as likely. I think it makes a lot of sense to just kind of burn and churn at the position and accept what he did for the team and how great he was for the team and move on, because this is his last year on his contract. He's played at a greater value and he's given you a greater return on investment than you would have hoped. And it's been fantastic. And maybe for that reason, you don't want to finally see what life is like to get equal investment and return on investment. You know, you want to keep staying in that plus area. But to me, it seems like they just extended Hyde through 2023, so this year and next year. I see a very similar path, and I think extending Diggs is the first step or the first domino to fall to make that happen, because now the Bills have more cap space for 2022 and 2023 to go ahead and make that kind of move. I definitely think it's still likely that the Bills will continue to kind of invest in this safety position, but I think really the investment and the investment level in that position will be very telling as to what the story is and what the writing on the wall is for Poyer. But I think they're going to try to keep Poyer through 2023 as long as they keep Hyde here through 2023. So I think they're going to try to keep those guys locked up together as long as they possibly can. Poyer's 1 year younger than Hyde, so I feel like coming off arguably his greatest season as a Buffalo Bill, it's hard to ignore that kind of return on investment, and he should get more money, but there's always that tipping point.
And Dave Arizi comes in and says Poyer wants a payday, and I sort of mused this on social media over the past day and a half. If Jordan Poyer is looking for a payday, like he wants to be the highest safety in the league, age becomes a factor in that situation, right? Like guys on the plus side of 30, you're not going to make him the highest paid safety in football. I don't care that he was a first team All-Pro last year. I don't care that maybe safeties age a little bit more gracefully than other positions. You're just not going to make that dude the highest paid safety in the league at his age. But if maybe more guarantees is all he wants, I wouldn't mind keeping him at $10 million AAV and just fully guaranteeing his contract, because both Poyer and Hyde have shown that they are durable players and they both play positions that can age pretty gracefully. So if you can get both Hyde and Poyer, because I think you got to do them both and lock them both up. Like if you give Poyer 3 more years, I think you got to give Poyer or Hyde like 2 more years to even them out. If you just change their contracts from the very little guarantees that they have right now with a $10 million AAV to a $10 million AAV, but it's fully guaranteed, obviously you run the risk of them getting hurt or their play dropping off and you have to eat all those guarantees. But if you're confident that they can age well, if they're confident they won't get hurt, maybe just offering them like fully guaranteed contracts might be a way to keep these guys at a lower AAV and on your team for at least 2-3 more years to play out the sort of last 3 years of their career. Dave, what are your thoughts on Jordan Poyer and the Jordan Poyer situation? I guess we can lump Micah Hyde in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a couple of years ago. He signed the 2-year deal, just under $20 million. I like those kind of 1-2 year deals that they've been getting. I mean, Micah Hyde basically just got the exact same contract last year to get him through 2023 that Poyer got previously that put him through 2022. Here's where I come out on this situation. The Bills have drafted safeties. They've drafted Jaquan Johnson. They've drafted DeMar Hamlin, late rounders. And I know Jordan Poyer himself was a late rounder. And they really found a diamond in the rough with Jordan Poyer. But that was at the point in time where they were rebuilding the roster. Okay? I don't know that the Bills are willing to go that route again at that position, knowing how important Poyer's been in this team, to try to find another diamond in the rough, because if you are thinking that you're just going to try to find someone at equal skill level as Jordan Poyer, maybe a little younger, you're going to pay that guy more probably than you'd have to pay Jordan Poyer for like a 2-year deal. So if you're the Bills, you either have to basically completely reset at the position and draft the heir apparent, or try to find another diamond in the rough free agent and hope it pans out, which is no guarantee if you're talking about the monetary aspect, or you got to pay Jordan Poyer probably for like another 2-year deal. Maybe it's like a 2-year, $20 million deal and like 15 million of it's guaranteed or something like that, right? At this point in his career, that'll take him to age 33, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But you can't just not bring him back in 2023 and expect to go out into the free agent market and bring in someone that you're going to spend less on than Jordan Poyer, unless you're willing to reset at the position, right? Through a draft pick or a diamond in the rough potential free agent. So for me, I'd love to see him get a nice 2-year extension, 2-year deal beyond 2022 that basically locks him in for 23 and 24. And maybe at some point you tack on a year to Micah Hyde's, but you can kind of handle that as it comes, right? Like Kendall said, Hyde's a year older. Right now, if you can get Poyer at least extended to where you have those guys guaranteed with both going to be on your roster for this season and next season, I think that's a win for the Bills, right? 2 more seasons with those 2 guys and then see what happens. But I would be willing to give Jordan Poyer a nice little contract for 2 years would be my preference.
Yeah, the thing is like if you're all in this year, which the Bills clearly are, because they're kicking a lot of they kicked a lot of cans down the road to fit Von Miller into the salary cap. I don't think the Buffalo Bills want Jordan Poyer to go anywhere, but that's a different question in 2020. That's a different question in 2023 though, or 2024. I don't even know what the season. Next year's gonna be the 2022 season. 2022 season.
2023.
2023
this
season.
Is 2022 season.
Yeah. So but either way, I think the one thing that is working in the Buffalo Bills' favor is if Jordan Poyer holds out, number one, when he does finally come crawling back, when the Buffalo Bills don't meet his demand, because he's not going to hold out into the regular season. I mean, the guy pretty well knows the playbook. He's been the safety here for how many years. And number two, the NFL has made it really difficult for players to hold out. There's really no incentives for players to hold out anymore. So the Buffalo Bills, I think, hold most of the chips here. Not that you want to leverage that against a player who's been here for so long and means so much to your franchise, but the Buffalo Bills do, in fact, hold the cards here in this situation. And I think this goes to a point as well. Like, I look back at that Sean McDermott 2017 defense. They were good defense with rookies, value free agents, and those rookies and those value free agents carried us to the playoffs. And we no longer have an offense that needs a defense to carry it to the playoffs. So I'm not saying this year, because this year I want Jordan Poyer on this roster. The Buffalo Bills are all in 2023. But in terms of 2024, guys like Tremaine Edmonds, guys like Jordan Poyer, I'm like pushing them out the door. And I'm trying to pay guys like Gabriel Davis and Dawson Knox. The Air Raid Hour poll question this week: if you're Brandon Beane and you can only afford to extend one of these players next year, who is it? Tremaine Edmonds got 14%. Dawson Knox got 86%. And that was with over 1,500 votes. If you're the Bills, guys, like, what route are you taking? Are you trying to keep a balanced offense and a balanced defense and trying to keep the money even on both sides? Or are you investing your resources in the offense and you're counting on your coaches, who are finger quotes defensive gurus, to get you by on defense, even if maybe the talent isn't on the defense like it is on the offense? Dave, what do you think?
How hard is it to get yourself to a level in the NFL where you have one of the elite tight ends, right? We talked about this last offseason. Darren Waller, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, right? It's a short list. Even very, very good players like TJ Hawkinson and Zach Ertz and guys like that are not on the short list of elite tight ends. Dawson Knox is on the trajectory of being in that top 10. He might already even be in the top 10, but he's on a trajectory of potentially being a top 5 tight end in the NFL and putting himself in the conversation above the likes of Hawkinson and getting himself mentioned with the likes of Waller and Kittle and Kelsey, right? He's on the precipice of that. As much time as the Bills have spent trying to get Dawson Knox to where he is, and that he finally had that breakout, and he's such a now nice part of this offense where the Bills aren't so wide receiver heavy, and we know, like you just said, this offense can carry this team now. I'm with the poll results, man. I'm with the poll results. I'm going with Dawson Knox if I have to choose between one of the two. I like a lot of the linebackers in this year's draft class. I also understand that Tremaine Edmonds is not as bad as a lot of people make him out to be. I also think that maybe he's not as good as some people make him out to be. I think he's very good. I think that there is still some ceiling there for Tremaine Edmonds, and it's a calculated risk you have to take if you're the Bills if you end up only having to pick one of those two. The age of Tremaine Edmonds is staring you in the face saying, like, there's possibly still untapped potential here. Are we willing to let that walk out the door cleanly, right? With no dead cap, whatever, UFA after this year, and put our cards in the Dawson Knox basket. I think if it was me, I would do that. I would put my cards in the Dawson Knox basket, considering what he meant to this offense last year. But it's not, 86-14 is pretty telling, right? And I know it's because it's because of recency bias, right? Dawson Knox was awesome last year. Before last season, that poll may have been a little bit more even, right? The hands issues would not but because of last season, it obviously, I think, skewed the numbers and rightfully so. I think rightfully so.
Yeah.
Kendall, what are your thoughts here? If you are the Buffalo Bills and over the next 2-3 years, you got decisions to make on Gabriel Davis, Dawson Knox, to name a few on offense, and then on defense, Tremaine Edmonds, Hyde, Poyer, and Ed Oliver as well. Are you focusing the monetary resources to keep the offense a juggernaut? Are you focusing the resources to keep the defense a juggernaut and leaning on your quarterback and wide receiver number one that you just paid? Or are you trying to keep a balance between the two? Well, like what approach are you taking?
I'm definitely taking the balanced approach, but I want to answer the poll. I would definitely take Dawson Knox, but I would take it in a more like methodical fashion, especially based on how the tight end market was treated this offseason.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what Dawson Knox is worth anymore. And it's kind of wild how much some tight ends got paid this year. So I would kind of I would make my decision on that based on how the negotiations would go for both Knox and Edmonds. But just like on face value, I think it makes more sense to sign Knox long term. But from a philosophical standpoint, I want to keep balance on this team, because this team, if you keep balance, this offense is always going to be a juggernaut with 17 under center. He's going to elevate the play of everyone around him. We've gotten past the point of we need to surround Josh Allen with weapons to make sure Josh Allen's good and isolate the variables and evaluate if he's our franchise quarterback. He is our franchise quarterback. He's that dude. He elevates the talent of those around him. Keeping Diggs on this team long-term makes it a lot easier to patchwork and piecework everything around that core of Allen and Diggs, and then finding what else can work, because Josh Allen will elevate the play of wide receivers and tight ends around him. So I'm not leaning heavier into defense, but I think there is value to keeping balance, because Josh Allen will always elevate your offense, and this is an offensive league. There is value to going against the grain a little bit and putting some extra chips in the basket of your defense to stop those overpowered offenses across the NFL. Because at the end of the day, we know defense wins championships. When the Chiefs won, they had a fantastic offense, but no one talks about how good their defense played in all of their playoff runs. And every time they lost, it was because their defense let them down, not because their offense let them down. This year, I guess you could make a slight difference because Mahomes was not too sharp in that game against the Bengals. But I am personally team go against the grain a little bit, because, I mean, Belichick has been doing that for years. He's been going against the grain of the trend, and it's been working. The league goes one way, he goes another, and no one's able to defend it because everyone's getting lighter. He's getting heavier. It makes it easier to run power run when everyone's getting lighter. So that's just kind of my thought to the balance of things.
I will say this though, there's an added variable here, right? The Bills have been in tight end purgatory since like Jay Remersma. Okay, like we had Charles Clay, didn't really work out. Like Scott Chandler, fine, nice player, but like didn't really move the needle. Like the Bills finally got one, right? They finally got one, and they got one with an elite quarterback. Like look at the Super Bowl teams from the last few years, right? You had Gronk with Tampa, you have Kelsey with Kansas City. You even in the Kansas City, San Francisco Super Bowl, you had George Kittle with the Niners, and then before that, the Chiefs again with Kelsey. So it's like it's important to have a good tight end right now in the NFL, because if you do have an elite tight end, it's a clear differentiator versus like 90% of the league. So it's tough. No, Kendall, I get it. Like
I would pick Dawson Knox. I would pick Dawson Knox in a 1v1 between what's going on here with Tremaine and Dawson Knox. I think it makes more sense to sign Dawson Knox. You'll probably get him cheaper. You'll probably get literally more points out of him because he's on offense. But no, I think it makes more sense. The only thing that gives me pause is literally the tight end market this year. That's the only thing.
And I think the tight end market shows like how desperate teams are to get that
good
tight
point.
end.
Yes.
So it is wild though. The market is wild.
And, before, let's get into it now. So we got David Kane coming in saying, a Jalen Petrie stan. I think he's had about 20 comments in the comment section about Jalen Petrie already. So David, we're finally we're gonna let your freak flag fly here, because we're gonna get to linebackers, and we are gonna get to safeties tonight. And we're gonna start with safeties in a moment, but it just appears like a lot of this evidence, the Stefon Diggs extension, the Jordan Poyer contract situation, it just screams that maybe linebacker and safety is a bigger need than maybe we would have thought in January or February for the Buffalo Bills. It went from, well, maybe we could, sacrifice a third rounder on a linebacker to hedge our bets against Tremaine Edmonds, to like legitimately, I could see us taking Lewis Sign in the first round. I could see us taking Chad Muma in the second round, like boom, boom, back to back, and just preparing for life without Jordan Poyer and Tremaine Edmonds in 2024. Like I can picture a scenario like that in my head. It doesn't sound crazy to me. If you look at it now, the Buffalo Bills have had top 30 visits. These are the top 30 visits that are confirmed with the Buffalo Bills. They've Isaiah Spiller and James Cook. So all the James Cook people, I'm sure you're excited about that one. Isaiah Likely, the tight end from Coastal. Nicholas Petit-Frere, the offensive lineman from Ohio State. Andrew Booth Jr., the cornerback from Clemson. Buffalo Fanatics was reporting today Martin Emerson from Mississippi State. Haven't seen that anywhere else, but I will trust them until I see something that maybe proves otherwise. And then Georgia has Georgia safety Lewis Cine and Maryland safety Nick Cross. So those are the Buffalo Bills pre-draft visits so far. They're starting to pile up now, which makes me all excited. The Buffalo Bills have also showed heavy interest in both Chad Muma and Troy Anderson so far in the pre-draft process, meeting with Muma, meeting with Anderson at the combine. They had representatives at South Dakota State's pro day, or not South Dakota State, Troy Anderson. Why am I
Montana
blanking?
State.
Montana State. Thank you.
Montana
At
State.
the pro day. So the Buffalo Bills look like they're doing their homework on linebackers. They look like they're doing their homework on safeties as well. Let's walk through the safety depth chart, and let's start with safeties. Looking at the Buffalo Bills secondary, and let's just focus on safeties for now. Obviously, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde are entrenched as the starting, safeties. Behind them, you have Damar Hamlin. I can't speak tonight, and Jaquan Johnson. And behind them, you have Josh Thomas. So the Buffalo Bills have 5 solid safeties. The Buffalo Bills could go into next season with those 5 safeties, and we would be just fine. The Buffalo Bills could nab a guy in the middle rounds to come in and compete with those depth pieces, and we would be just fine. But with this Jordan Poyer situation, we now could find ourselves in a situation where a first or second round safety is not out of the realm of possibility. So my first question to you guys, gentlemen, is this. And Dave, I'll start with you. Would you draft a safety in the first round? And if not, when is the earliest you would draft a safety?
I would not draft a safety in the first round. The earliest I would draft a safety would probably be the 3rd round, maybe this year. And the reason I say that is because right? Like, you still have Jordan Poyer, you still have Micah Hyde for this year. You invested in DeMar Hamlin, draft capital in DeMar Hamlin. Yes, Jaquan Johnson now has been here with the team for several years, but it was draft capital you spent on it. I'm not saying it's high draft capital, but it is draft capital.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you are the Bills and you are in this Super Bowl window and you have this team, this elite team that you're putting on the field for 2022, does drafting a safety in the 1st round help you in 2022? Probably not. Does it set you up potentially as a contingency plan for 2023? Yes, but then where is that roster spot going to come away from? Is someone like Jaquan Johnson going to get cut in this situation? Like, what happens from a numbers game standpoint if you draft a safety in the 1st round? Because he's going to be on the roster. He will be on the roster. And when you draft a safety in the 1st round, it's also probably sending a message to Jordan Poyer more so than anyone that you're not in our future plans. So I don't think it would affect his play, but it's not the most like warm and fuzzy feeling in the locker room probably for Jordan Poyer. So for me, I wouldn't probably go for a safety until at least the 3rd round, maybe even later, to be honest. And then if you just do decide to move on from Jordan Poyer after 2022, then maybe you open up that conversation for 2023. So I'm thinking now, the more I'm thinking about it, probably nothing day 1 or day 2, maybe 4th round is the earliest I would go after a safety.
Kendall, how about you? What is the earliest you would draft a safety? Would you use a 1st rounder on a safety, or a 2nd rounder on a safety, like Jalen Petrie?
No, I would also stay away from the safety position in the first couple of rounds. I think it's smart for the Bills to be doing their homework on these guys, because if at the end of the day they are BPA, then you go that route and you answer your Jordan Poyer question. Like it makes sense. But if I'm sitting here and I'm like putting a line in the sand and I'm telling myself what not to do and I'm sticking to that, I'm with you till I'm going 4th round. We know Bean talks about drafting for now and drafting for the future, and safety is something that could be now and future, but that now is really only special team stuff. So do you really want to draft a guy in the 1st or 2nd or even 3rd round who's really just going to bump Jaquan Johnson off the roster in his final year of contract with the Buffalo Bills, just to essentially be a special teams player and then your contingency for the future, when I'm sure a lot of people in the chat, myself included, we want guys not necessarily to contribute day 1, but do something in 2022, even if it's like a Boogie Basham type contribution, something where you're seeing some meaningful snaps on defense on day 1. You're not going to get those at the safety position. If you draft a guy in the 1st or 2nd round, like it's going to take an injury for you to get playing time, unless the Bills do go to, thick dime or whatever it is with 3 safeties on the field. Maybe it goes to that, but come on, guys. Like, Bills defense has been so vanilla over the years. You think they're really going to tweak the scheme like that?
We had a virtual meeting with Kyle Hamilton, safety from Notre Dame, who's probably going to be a top 5 pick, but some people think he could slip out of the top 10 into the top 15 range. I doubt it, but I'm never going to say never to anything. But a guy like Kyle Hamilton, if the Bills are in striking distance of being able to get a guy like Kyle Hamilton might be the exception, because I can honestly envision a world where the Bills trade Tremaine Edmonds to trade up for Kyle Hamilton and then start Kyle Hamilton at middle linebacker. The Commanders started Landon Collins and then just move Kyle Hamilton back when Jordan Poyer leaves. But that's definitely galaxy brain type of stuff. So let's get into maybe some of the more nitty gritty realistic stuff here. And let's break down the safety board. Let's start with the first 3 rounds of the draft at safety. The only bona fide 1st round pick that I have projected is Kyle Hamilton. I'm pretty confident that Dax Hill, Lewis Cine, and Jaquan Brisker could all go in the first round, or at least one of the three could possibly go in the first round. I think it's most likely that Hill also goes in the first round along with Kyle Hamilton. So these are the four guys who are likely going to hear their names called probably before the Bills pick at 57. I don't envision a world where any of these guys, Hamilton, Hill, Seen, or Brisker, definitely not Hamilton, I don't even know why I said his name there, fall to pick 57. And then in the second and the third round, you have Jalen Petrie, the safety from Baylor, Kirby Joseph from Illinois, and I think Nick Cross from Maryland has tested his way, and now people are looking at the tape of Nick Cross. I don't see or envision a world where Nick Cross, is available to the Buffalo Bills in the fourth round. But again, never say never. But my projection for him is a third round pick. I will say the two players in the fourth, fifth round range I didn't want to put there. Brian Cook, Verone McKinley, even Dane Belton. All of those guys could possibly go in the third round. But remember, I look at the averages. How many players on average are drafted? And on average, only 7 guys have been drafted in the first 3 rounds of the draft over the past 3 years. So I didn't want to sit there and throw 10 guys onto that list of first, second, third round grades. So I put Brian Cook, Verone McKinley, and Dane Belton from Iowa. I put them into rounds 4 and 5, but they could easily slide their way into the third round. Dave, I'm going to start with you. You're looking at this board here: Hamilton, Hill, Seen, Brisker, Petrie, Joseph, Cross. Obviously, the Bills have met with Seen and Cross, and virtually with Kyle Hamilton. Any of these guys stick out to you as like your guy of this group of first 3 round guys? I know you don't want to take a guy in the first 3 rounds, but if the Bills did, which one are you hoping? Who do you think is maybe the best fit?
Man, that's tough. I like a lot of these guys here. I really like Kirby Joseph from Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And doing my research today, I found him to be really intriguing. I mean, Kendall, you sent us over the SIS info today, and I did some digging on the SIS grading as well for Kirby Joseph, and he's like the definition of like your sort of prototypical rangy free safety, right? He's their 5th ranked safety. He's their 35th ranked overall prospect. And like, to me, he's a guy that if you're kind of looking for some, kind of uber athletic, rangy type of guy, like he would be the guy for me. And then you look at like where he's kind of consensusly ranked, and like you figure that he could be a guy that maybe if the Bills were intrigued enough that they could pull the trigger on him in the third round, he could be the guy there. And I'm not saying they will, but I think out of all the guys there, he intrigues me the most. I like Nick Cross. Obviously, he had the incredible testing, right? I think he was the highest RAS safety of the entire safety group, if I'm not mistaken. So he's intriguing to me as well. Maryland obviously has had a somewhat of a recent track record of putting safeties in the league. Darnell Savage with the Packers has turned out to be a pretty damn good player for them. So there is some precedent there for that Maryland program. But other than those, those 2 guys, like the other guys, to me, like you'd have to pull the trigger on them on, in the second round. I think, Brisker for sure. I think you'd have to pull the trigger on the second round, and he might not even be there for you in the second round if you really wanted to get him. So I would say Kirby Joseph to me is the most intriguing. A lot of people like Petrie, but again, I feel like he's a guy you'd probably have to pick at 57 if you wanted to. Obviously, the athleticism is there for him as well. But Joseph just kind of, I don't know, he speaks to me. I kind of like him. I liked what I saw. I'm watching a couple of the Illinois games today that I was able to kind of dig into him, and I was really impressed with what I saw from him.
Yeah, it seems like Kirby Joseph and Lewis Seen are the 2 really that fit the mold for the Bills. Petrie's my guy. I'm a big fan of Jalen Petrie. I have been since even before the Senior Bowl. Obviously, he's got that Dave Aranda connection. Sean McDermott, Dave Aranda are super tight, so I think there's a connection there. Hopefully, that connection brings JT Woods in the later rounds to Buffalo, because he's my guy late, and we'll get to him in a little bit. But here's Kirby Joseph, sort of like quick write-up from SIS. And this quick write-up here, this screams to me something that maybe the Buffalo Bills would be interested in, or someone who's of a similar skill set, possibly to a Jordan Poyer or Micah Hyde. This is the quick write-up from SIS. Their new website is absolutely incredible, by the way.
Yeah,
I was
awesome.
so mad I was so mad when the book went away, but this website is
Yeah, it's much
outrageously
better.
awesome.
It's
Kendall,
really
you had,
good.
you had a lot to do with that. I think you were the lead engineer of the.
Oh
of
yeah,
the,
I'm really good with the tech stuff. Oh yeah.
But here's the quick write-up of Kirby Joseph. Joseph is a rangy ball hawking deep safety who has smarts and skills to be a starter at the next level, though he'll become more of a threat if he gets a little bit more physical and is willing to mix it up more often. So right there, Kirby Joseph's write-up is something that I think is right there in the Bills' wheelhouse. Lewis Cine is another one who I think is right in the Bills' wheelhouse. I think we'd have to trade up in the second round to get him, though. Cine's right up from SIS. Cine has very good tackling and ball skills with speed and smarts to play on the back end as a role-playing starter, but his inconsistencies in run support and as a tackler may hold him back from reaching his full potential. Something that I think we've had our issues with guys like Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, where maybe they're a little bit better dropping back than they are closer to the line of scrimmage and some of that run support stuff that they do. So Kendall, how about you? I know you've you've done some Kirby Joseph stuff. You've done some Nick Cross stuff. Who are the guys that are sticking out to you in the, in the first 3 rounds that the Buffalo Bills were to pull the trigger?
Yeah, I'm definitely in on Nick Cross. I really liked Kirby Joseph's tape, but a lot of that run support stuff was giving me pause, especially with like his body's type. You would think he would be better in run support, but he was really inconsistent with his angles at times. But they're very confident with him at Illinois with his center fielding stuff. He shows the range to cover a lot of ground, so you got to love that stuff and what he can do in coverage. So I definitely liked him from a coverage perspective. But yeah, Coop was spot on with his analysis. But Nick Cross, his athleticism pops off the tape. I think the only thing he needs to get better with is his route recognition in zone, because if he's playing man, he can stick with anyone. He has the quick, twitchy ability to stick with anyone with reactiveness, and he has the speed to close ground quickly. But like, I watched the Ohio State game, he just had no idea there was a post route coming right behind him and allowed a touchdown, easy touchdown, just because he got pulled in by a flat route that was covered by a linebacker. But for whatever reason, he just kind of lost discipline to his coverage and completely lost track of Olave behind him. So I love his athleticism and I love the tools that you can work with. And I think because the tape is somewhat inconsistent, I think he's a guy that could drop into the fourth round. And I really like the idea of getting him in the fourth round. If he is there in the third round, I would definitely have some pause. Like he is someone, it would depend on what the board is like. If I didn't like the board and, major areas of concern are already grabbed up, like, corner, wide receiver, what have you. And he's on the board in round 3. I'd think about it for sure. Yeah. But it's a little bit rich for me. I liked what he did in run support too. He was very, very disciplined in his run gaps. He didn't get over pursuit and really over pursue one angle and allow a cutback lane or anything like that. He was super, super disciplined, and you could tell that he was very physical at the point of attack. Just kind of need to round out the coverage side of his game. But with that athleticism, he has all the traits to get better in that area. And I have confidence that, of course, the Bills coaching staff can coach him up in that specific area. So I like the fit in that regard. Getting someone super athletic on the back end can only be helpful for specific types of coverages. If you want to get a little bit more cover 2 centric, or if you want to really lean into that cover 1 stuff, he has the range to cover a lot of the field.
By Chance comes in and says, you see the Diggs news. Apparently the extension saves $6.1 million this year. Could a new cornerback be incoming? I mean, the Buffalo Bills, per some reports, were like right up against it. So I would say at least half of that, maybe even more, has to go to like paying the first 3 round picks of the draft class. So maybe not so much with the possibility of a corner, but you never know. So I think By Chance brings up a great point. We could be sitting here on Monday show talking about the addition of Joe Hayden or the addition of any other cornerback that might be possibly sitting out there on the market. So apparently the Bills, I haven't seen it yet, but apparently it's maybe has come across the wire over the last hour or so since we've been on. The Buffalo Bills did save $6.1 million in cap space this year with the addition of Stefon Diggs. So that's always fun. Lewis Cine, the SIS stuff says, this is rather concerning to me. Inconsistencies in run support and as a tackler may hold him back from reaching his true potential. Kendall, have you seen enough of Scene's tape
Scene
to
of
sort
scene.
of scene of Scene to make sort of an assessment of this write up here?
Yeah, no, I that checks out. I haven't watched like a full game or anything, but I've watched so much of offenses going against Georgia to see what, offensive guys in this draft can do against NFL talent. So I've seen from afar. And the thing with him is that he's so aggressive in run support and he just runs around like a bullet that sometimes he just, he's over pursuit and he'll take bad angles because he's just so concerned with making that big hit that he'll miss a tackle or whatever it is. So it's kind of like that early Matt Milano and Teron Johnson stuff where it's just they're running around with their head cut off, just trying to make a play as fast as they can, not really thinking about the consequences of run gaps they're leaving open or anything like that. So it concerns me to an extent, but it's something that can be coached out. Like that we saw it coached out with Milano and Teron Johnson, where they kept that same energy, but they dialed it back to make sure they're keeping all of the gaps sound for the entire defense. So that checks out with me.
And before we move on to maybe some of the later round safeties, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, the top three guys. Obviously, Kyle Hamilton. I mean, he has a chance to be an all-timer. I mean, it's just, I think it was The Ringer put out their draft profile. And when they comped him, their comp was Ken Griffey Jr. because they were talking about just the way he plays center field at 6'4", 220 pounds. So a guy like Kyle Hamilton just hasn't a chance to be an elite level defender in the National Football League. The Bills had a virtual meeting with him. It's probably just them doing their due diligence, but I wouldn't be surprised if he slips past 10, which would be incredible, that the Buffalo Bills try to make a move up to secure the services. But, Jaquan Brisker, Daxton Hill, they both, they're 3-level defenders. They each, can be used in a versatile manner. Dax Hill especially can do a lot of man-to-man stuff, can play nickel. Some people think he can even play boundary. So you have some versatility with those two guys, and between Hill and Brisker and Hamilton, those are, I think, the top 3 safeties in the class. Some people want to make an argument, obviously, for Lewis Cine as well. My guy will always be, as David Kane mentioned in the comment section, this is a guy that, I've been on for 2 years now, just watching Baylor because, Sean McDermott, Dave Aranda have that close relationship. Baylor has so many prospects this year and so many good players on that defense. And I just absolutely love Jalen Petre's game. He's just such a super twitched up dude. He's so good at the line of scrimmage. He played that star role in that Dave Aranda defense where they moved him all around. I can envision, people say he struggles in center field, etc. And I understand that. There are concerns that Jalen Petre might not be a deep safety in the National Football League, but when you're using them interchangeably, when that's not the only thing he's doing, I can picture Jalen Petre playing that Jordan Poyer role. Obviously, as the years progress, if you take a guy like Jalen Petre at 57, I think that you would want to then be on the lookout for the next guy to be more of a center fielder like a Micah Hyde to pair along with a guy like Jalen Petre, whereas Kirby Joseph would be more like probably a Micah Hyde type of guy. And I know the Buffalo Bills use their safeties interchangeably. I understand that, but I do think Hyde is the better center fielder and Jordan Poyer is probably a little bit better at the line of scrimmage. So they each have their strengths, even though they can be interchangeable and do both. So always got to rep my guy, Jalen Petre. He's one of my favorite prospects in this class.
Are you hinting at a possible sighting on the no matter what list here?
Listen, I am, but I'm also not, because as we get to the 4th and the 5th round, Kendall, I'm definitely going to want you to talk about a guy like Brian Cook, Verone McKinley, Dane Belton from Iowa, Jonia Thomas from Georgia Tech, who was just tested obscenely, Tycene Anderson from Toledo, Sterling Weatherford from Miami of Ohio, repping the MAC. Maybe some people think maybe he's even more of a linebacker. And then the other guy where I'm tempted to put on that no matter what list, a guy like JT Woods, who is a little bit more of a center fielder, kind of an athlete like Dax Hill. They were talking at the combine about a guy like JT Woods has the athleticism to play boundary corner if an NFL team wanted him to. Then there's Marquise Bell, who had a really good NFLPA game out of Florida A&M. Delaren Turner-Yell from Oklahoma. Leon O'Neal from Texas A&M. You got the Manny Diaz, Sean McDermott connection, and Bubba Bolden, a guy we've mentioned a couple of times, former USC highly sought after recruit, transferred to Miami. You got Yusuf Corker from Kentucky. You got Smoke Monday, who's more of a line of scrimmage safety to me, a box safety to me from the University of Auburn, and then Nick Grant from Virginia. And then there's a ton of guys all these UDFA guys someone could fall in love with and take in the 6th or the 7th round. Our guy who's been our guy for a long time, 2 years now, since we thought he was draft eligible last year, Reed Blankenship from Middle Tennessee State. Guys like Brad Hawkins from Michigan, Percy Butler from Louisiana. There's a whole bunch of other names. Amari Carter's another Florida guy, or another Miami guy. So a ton of safeties here in the later rounds. Kendall, I'm gonna start with you because I know you're a member, a bona fide member of the Brian Cook fan club, and there was a really great post from Ben Fennell today, one of my favorite follows on Twitter, and he said, and he's not even a Bills guy, right? Like he's not a Bills draft guy, like he's not a Bills content creator, he's an NFL content creator, and he was like, yeah, watching this Brian Cook tape reminds me of Jordan Poyer. So maybe speak to that comp that he had and what you like about Brian Cook out of Cincinnati.
I think that's fair because, like you were just talking about with Poyer and Hyde, they're both interchangeable. They both can play center field, and they both can come up and run support, but one's better than the other in each area, and Poyer's a little bit better closer to the line of scrimmage. I think the same is true for Brian Cook. He's super interchangeable, super versatile. He played a lot of slot at Cincinnati. He played a lot of single high coverage safety, and he played a lot just moving around in zone, playing in the middle hook curl zone. He did a lot of everything. But he's very strong. He's very strong in run support at the point of attack. He's very strong in coverage when he's jamming people, when he's getting in their face to disturb their route, whatever it is. He's very strong everywhere in his game. And then I really like his zone processing. When he does drop back into center field, he's very good at processing the routes around him and realizing which ones he should jump, which ones he should stay disciplined, and make sure he's not allowing that back end of the defense to become vulnerable, any of that stuff. He's very disciplined in that regard. He's a very, very good tackler, but sometimes he'll kind of get that Lewis Cine thing where he'll over pursuit and get a little bit overzealous and try to make a big play when he doesn't have to. And he can just stay sound with his tackling form and just kind of break down and make the play because he's a very good tackler. Sometimes he gets overzealous. So I love his game because I think he can fit this Bills defense from that interchangeable kind of standpoint where he can do a little bit of strong safety. He can do a little bit of free safety. He can do a little bit of that Jamal Adams stuff in the box. He can do a little bit of everything. So I like the value proposition with him and the fact that he's very versatile.
Dave, how about you? Is there any sort of these safeties in this 4th, 5th round? Because that's the range you talked about. You mentioned the 4th, 5th round is sort of your range where you would like the Buffalo Bills to select a safety. Anyone really sticking out to you here in this range?
Well, I would say the 4th, 5th round is probably the earliest I would want to see them, right? So for me, I think this is the spot where if a guy like a Jalen Petrie fell, or if a guy like a Nick Cross was sitting around here, or a Verone McKinley, maybe even, like, I would be tempted, right? But I also like a lot of the guys that potentially could end up falling later. So I would say in the 4th, 5th round, it would be guys maybe that you had on the 2nd, 3rd round list that I'd be willing to take. As far as the guys that you have listed here in the 4th, 5th round, if you don't mind bringing that list up again. Yeah. I like McKinley. Dane Belton is a guy that I feel like is there's not a lot of consensus opinion on him. I feel like TDN scouts are a little bit lower on him than SIS. To me, I think Dane Belton's a pretty solid player. TDN isn't as high on him as being a real defensive contributor, but I like Dane Belton. And I do like Verone McKinley too. McKinley was tied for the lead in college football with 6 picks in 2021. He's played in 2 deep schemes, right? And he comes from a program with a track record of putting safeties in the NFL. Just Javon Holland last year, and I forgot who the later round guy was for them. They had 2 safeties drafted. two safeties drafted last year. And we know Jairus Byrd from, I mean, like they've got safeties that they've put into the NFL. So I like McKinley there. I'm probably a little higher on Belton than others. Like he had a 9.36 RAS and he had 5 interceptions in 2021 to top off, his Iowa career. And we know, the Bills with Iowa. So again, the connection there. So, before I get to the late round guys, I would say in that 4th, 5th round range, McKinley, Belton, those are two guys that really stand out to me. There's a couple other guys I like, but they'd probably be later, and we'll talk about them in a second.
Yeah, Dave Belton has a pretty solid write-up here from SIS. Belton has the natural athleticism, instincts, and ball skills to be a sub-package playmaker with upside in the NFL, but he'll need to improve his play strength and man coverage versatility to reach his ceiling, which for a guy who's like their 8th or 9th ranked player, like that's a pretty
he's their 8th ranked safety.
Yeah.
And I think I think TDN has him down close to 20. So again, pretty wide range there.
PFF is pretty high. Pro Football Focus is pretty high on Dane Belton as well. I'm not exactly sure where they have him ranked. Looking through some of these safeties again, like Smoke Monday is a box safety, so I don't know if the Buffalo Bills would have too much of an interest in him. Weatherford as well. I know Quad Puig comes in, but again, JT Woods sort of like the poor man's Dax Hill in this draft, a guy you could maybe move around a little bit, maybe had some untapped potential, and he's got that familiarity between Dave Aranda and Sean McDermott. Yusef Corker is another guy who, he's a rangy safety, but, they mention, most of the scouting reports mention he's really good in zone coverage, but not so much man-to-man coverage. So a guy like Yusef Corker, if they're looking for sort of that zone type of safety out of Kentucky, the Bills were at the Kentucky Pro Day. I know that they were looking more at guys like Josh Pascal. They had a nice conversation with Josh Pascal, but if they're scouting that Josh Pascal tape, they're seeing plenty of a guy like Yusef Corker as well. A guy like Percy Butler from Louisiana is another guy noted in multiple scouting reports for his zone coverage ability, his closing speed, his special teams contributions. So he's a guy later on in the draft as well. And then Verone McKinley is another guy. They mentioned how he was sort of the communicator, the play caller of that Oregon defense. He had good communication ability, ball skills on passing downs, but they questioned his ability on run downs. So to me, if I'm looking for what the Bills are going to want, to me, I'm thinking the Bills are going to want, and I could be wrong, because the Bills could be looking for something new. They could be looking for someone who can lock down man-to-man and cover the Travis Kelce's of the world. Who knows? But to me, I'm looking for zone coverage ability. I'm looking for somebody who knows what they're doing when they drop back there, into center field or play zone, and a guy that has the physical traits to maybe become better at the line of scrimmage, but probably their scouting report says they're a little weak in the run fits. They're a little weak at the line of scrimmage. And that's something the Buffalo Bills feel like they can coach up. Kendall, what kind of safety do you think the Bills are looking for late? And are there any other ones other than Brian Cook that you think really fit the mold?
It's interesting. I mean, it's tough to say what they want, because I think that versatility at the end of the day, the ability to be interchangeable is what they want. They want someone who's going to be very middling in their skill set in terms of not leaning too far towards box safety and not leaning too far towards coverage guy. I don't think they're necessarily picking one guy towards or the other, but I mean, I kind of said it before with I think it was Nick Cross that I was talking about. Yeah. I love what he does in run support, and it's not like it's eye-popping, but I'm a little bit more confident in him in run support. And because of that, I'm confident that the Bills could then coach up the coverage side, because we've seen that. We've seen the Bills do that. So I don't know if the Bills will think the same way, but that's kind of where I've been leaning. Someone else I like, though, is Tyson Anderson from Toledo. I'm really hoping he's someone that falls into round 5-6 area, because I think he could be a great value play. Someone who's really athletic, pops off the tape, definitely helps when you play the level of competition you play. But he really pops off the tape in terms of athleticism, good in coverage, good tackler, flies around the field, lots of versatility in that regard. So I like him, and I like the intrigue of athleticism and then what the Bills could mold that into. So he's someone I'm hoping falls into round 5-6 area because of the level of competition he was playing for Toledo.
Dave, how about you? Who are some of these maybe later round guys that really catch your eye, your interest here?
I mean, as far as late round guys that kind of just like intrigue me, Marquise
Mhm.
Bell is a guy that,
He had a
although
really good NFLPA bowl.
yeah, and I mean, this guy, he's kind of lanky for a safety. I mean, I wouldn't say he's
Mm.
lanky. It's probably unfair. With the way my notes I had on him were that he was a walking hit stick. I mean, the guy is like a heat seeking missile when it comes to finding contact, trying to tackle, being a willing tackler, and the Bills have struggled with tackling at stages. Even Poyer and Hyde, right, have struggled with sometimes with tackling. And you have a guy like Marquise Bell from Florida A&M, 4.41 40 time, so he's got the speed. Saw some nice examples of him coming off the edge as well, blitzing on some of the games, and I think a decent later round option for the Bills. I mean, he went from the 152nd ranked safety per PFF to 48 between 2021. So pretty good jump. And SIS is fairly high on him as well. They have him rounding out their top 10 in
Mhm.
safeties. He's ranked number 10 for them. So I like Marquise Bell. And then the other guy that I like late, who you briefly mentioned, was Percy Butler.
Yeah.
The 4.3640 at the 40 at the combine, was tied for the second fastest time of any of the safeties. And
Mhm.
he's been steadily in the top 50 to 75 range for 3 seasons in a row, ranking wise per PFF. So
Yeah.
you're getting a sound player, right? And he's got a ton of experience in his, he's going to be a fit in what the Bills are doing from a schematic standpoint. So I like Percy Butler. I like Marquise Bell. Very different players, but
Mhm.
they're both very interesting prospects to me.
All right, let's flip it now to the linebacker position, and we're looking at the linebacker position for the Buffalo Bills. And we have on, obviously you have your 2 entrenched starters here. It's a little distracted by the typo on the graphic. It's not the Buffalo Bills offense, it's Buffalo Bills defense. My bad. I will go in there and fix that later. But Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano are the 2 entrenched starters. The Buffalo Bills ran nickel more than any team in the National Football League last year. That is their base package. So guys like Tyrell Dodson, Andre Smith, Giles Harris, Tyler Matakevich, those guys are all sort of competing for backup roles. Dodson, Smith, Giles Harris are all competing sort of probably at this point to replace AJ Klein as the first linebacker onto the field if they decide to go base, or the first linebacker on the field if one of Tremaine Edmonds or Matt Milano gets hurt. Looking at this depth chart here, the Buffalo Bills would be perfectly fine going into the season with those players. They would be okay. If one of the linebackers got hurt, they might be in a little bit of trouble. You'd need a guy like Tyrell Dodson or Joe Giles Harris to step their game up. But the Buffalo Bills most people I think would be content with the linebacker spot. If the Buffalo Bills went into the season with that as their linebacker, I think a lot of people would look and say like, oh, we can take a linebacker in the 3rd round or the 4th round or the 5th round and have them come in and compete with Tyrell Dodson and Joe Giles Harris and Andre Smith. But we just paid Stefon Diggs, and now we have to have this conversation. We ran that poll, Dawson Knox or Tremaine Edmonds. So, Dave, I'm going to start with you. What's the earliest you would take a linebacker in this draft? Would you use a 1st round pick on a linebacker?
No, I mean, unless for some reason you had like the inkling to go for a Dean or a Lloyd, and they were sitting there, like it would be tough to pass on them, but
Peter
it
Schrager
would
had the Bills taking Quay Walker in his mock today, which
that I would be
was
upset with.
a
That
little nutty.
I would be upset in the 1st round.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I would be upset with. That I would be upset with. I'm not willing to go 1st round, but honestly, knocking one of those bottom tier linebackers that we have off the roster, if you bring that depth chart up again, is a little bit more palatable to me than investing in a safety in the 1st or 2nd round, knowing that you have Jaquan Johnson, DeMar Hamlin there. I don't have a problem knocking a guy like Andre Smith, knocking a guy like Joe Giles Harris off the roster for 2022 with a then forward-looking plan to look at 2023 and a life potentially without Tremaine Edmonds. So I am more willing, I'll say this, I am more willing to spend early round draft capital on a linebacker than I am a safety. Now, what round that is, if the right person was there, I think day 2, I'd be willing to pull the trigger on the linebacker. Maybe in the 3rd round, right? If the Bills go out and they get a corner in the 1st round, and maybe they get like a receiver or something in the 2nd round, and then all of a sudden the best player on their board is a linebacker in the 3rd, and like someone like Chad Muma or Troy Anderson sitting there in the 3rd round, yeah, I'd be willing to pull the trigger on that. And maybe even in the 2nd round, but there are some late round guys I like too. And that always kind of makes me come back to say like, okay, like there's so many late round guys I like. Who would I really be willing to pony up for? And there's only a few guys, but I will say I'm willing to move into day 2 as far as priority for a linebacker for the right guy than I would be for a safety.
Yeah, we got someone came in. Vasily said he mocks Troy Anderson to the Bills a lot. Well, hey,
I like Troy
the
Anderson.
Bills have shown
like
quite a bunch of interest in Troy Anderson in the pre-draft process, along with Chad Muma. Those seem to be the 2 linebackers linked to the Bills the most. Jim Wickens comes in and says Giles Harris was a practice squad guy. That is true, but I would argue he was probably one of the better practice squad players in the league. This is a guy who played significant snaps for the Jaguars 2 years ago, put up some decent box score numbers. Again, box score numbers are not 100% telling of how good a player is, but Giles Harris has shown he's a guy who's not going to embarrass himself if asked to play in this league. So one would argue that he's probably one of the better practice squad players in the league last year. And he's probably, now with AJ Klein gone, has a legitimate chance of making the roster this year if the Bills don't make any additions to the linebacker core in the draft. Kendall, how about you? What's the earliest you would take a linebacker? You would trade up top 5 and take Devin Lloyd, right? Like you'd risk it all.
No,
you trade Poyer, Edmonds, first this year, first next year.
I love Devin Lloyd. I really, really like Devin Lloyd, but I wouldn't take him in the 1st round unless we're trading Edmonds. That's literally the only way I would take Devin Lloyd in the 1st round if I'm the Buffalo Bills. It doesn't make sense from an asset allocation standpoint. You're drafting a dude with high draft capital that's just going to sit behind him or force you to go into base personnel. It just doesn't make sense. So, hey, if the Bills trade him and we get Devin Lloyd, I'm all for it because I really love Devin Lloyd's tape, but it doesn't really make sense otherwise. It just doesn't. But I'm with Tilt. Day 2 is kind of like that earliest point for me, because you can kind of start to understand like if teams force you to get into base personnel and you have that 3rd linebacker that you're really confident in, it'd be nice to have it be like a 2nd or 3rd round investment. So yes, day 2 is around the time that I would probably start thinking about it, but I'm still pretty much thinking round 4 is the earliest for safety and linebacker for me. That's kind of that tipping point where I'm starting to peek in and look at those guys, but it's not all that likely that someone I like is going to drop to the 4th round. So you kind of have to start thinking about linebacker in rounds 2 and 3 and check tabs to see if the guy you like fell a little bit or anything like that.
Yeah, I know. And I'm just, let's work our way now through sort of the draft board and talk about, hey, guys who would tempt us in certain rounds. Now it's obviously interesting too, because I think a couple of these sites, some of the guys that we talked about at safeties, guys like Sterling Weatherford, guys like Tariq Carpenter from Georgia Tech, those guys could be considered safeties too. Like I think SAS even has some of these guys ranked as safeties. So you could even throw a few more into this sort of fray if you want to count some of those safeties as linebackers as well. And obviously I think the Buffalo Bills are one of those teams where you could consider one of the heavier safety prospects, a linebacker prospect for a team like the Buffalo Bills. But going through my grades here, I had 1st/2nd round, meaning I don't think it's a guarantee or a lock that they go in the 1st round, but they could go in the 1st round. And they'll likely be off the board by the 3rd round. I had Devin Lloyd, Nakobe Dean, and Chad Muma. And as my 2nd, 3rd round guys, I had Quay Walker, Leo Chanel, Troy Anderson, Christian Harris from Alabama, and Darian Beavers from Cincinnati. Now, just like with safety, the average numbers games, there were some guys that I wanted to put higher on to day 3 or on to day 2 and could easily go on day 2. Brian Asamoah from Oklahoma, Channing Tindall from Georgia. I think there's plenty of teams that could fall in love with the athletic profile of Brandon Smith, even though I think his tape's not there based on most scouting reports I've read. Who piques your interests on day 1, day 2, day 3 of this draft? At the Buffalo Bills, we're making a conscious decision. We're hedging our bets. Tremaine Edmonds is walking next year. We're going to take a guy in the 2nd or the 3rd round. Dave, who's the guy you're zeroing in on?
I mean, Chad Muma has been kind of my guy from the beginning, right? I think, I'm not going to say I was the first, but I was pretty early days on Chad Muma when it came to my affection towards him, you could say, right? And watching the games, you were like, okay, this guy's like a freak. And then, of course, when he does the testing, it kind of pans out, right? He's 9.7 RAS. He's got inside out flex. He's going to come in and be at minimum a core special teamer right away. He can rush the passer a bit. I mean, he's just an athletic freak. And really, in my opinion, gives you flexibility at any of your linebacker spots, right? He could come in and potentially be the heir apparent to Tremaine Edmonds. He could also come in, and if you wanted to run some base personnel, he could fill the AJ Klein role, right? So he can do multiple things for you where you feel like if you were to, draft him in the 2nd or 3rd round, it's not a waste because you're not only getting a contribution from him, which, by the way, Boogie Basham, like, how many snaps did he really, like, what I'm saying is, like, compare it to other guys, right, who the Bills have drafted early, how much they played, and, like, you can see a path to him getting, like, what I would call meaningful playing time in 2022, while also potentially hedging your bets for a potential Tremaine Edmonds departure in 2023. So Chad Muma is the guy that really stands out to me. I mean, we've talked about him so much that you can't not mention Troy Anderson, right? In this mix, right? The 9.99 RAS, probably not going to be on my no matter what list, just because Chad Muma is my guy. But like, if I had a honorable mention no matter what list, Troy Anderson's probably going to make that list for me. And so I really like him as well. A guy that I've recently kind of come into, we've talked about Asamoah, so I'll let you talk about him, but a guy that recently kind of came into of interest for me is Leo Chenal, and he's kind of the opposite though, right? Of the guys. He's more of a run game type player, a blitzer. And he's not really the coverage type guy, but he would be the guy that, like, in my mind, would be the direct replacement for a Tremaine Edmonds, right? I mean, Wisconsin guy, 3rd ranked Mike, according to SIS, right? They have him a 6.5 grade, which is, they don't even have any linebackers this year rated in the 7s. So he's rated pretty high relative to the rest of the linebacking class. So Chenal is another guy that would intrigue me in the 3rd round. But I would say for me, it's Muma, and it kind of always has been. Even after researching some of these other guys, it's still Muma for me.
Yeah. And the thing about Chenal is I like Chenal, don't get me wrong. And I think he's got a ton of upside. And I think his RAS score shows that you could project him to do this well in the pros, but a guy who didn't get a lot of coverage reps and coverage experience in college at Wisconsin. He was used as a blitzer a lot. So that would be the concern, I think, with Leo Chenal. Christian Harris is
That's
interesting.
A good one.
And
that's a good one.
And Pops Mafia's like, why doesn't everyone want to talk about him? And to me, this is why, like, I never talk about Christian Harris. First of all, whenever I'm watching Alabama, my focus always is drawn. It's kind of like the Tremaine Edmonds, Matt Milano type of thing. My focus always gets drawn to Tua or Toa, however you want to say his name. The other linebacker that hasn't declared for the draft from Alabama, their off-ball linebacker, because he always seems to be the one that's like popping off whenever I'm watching Alabama play. But I mean, this guy he's obviously a really good athlete, Christian Harris. He's fast, he's versatile, he's got all of the physical traits that you look for, Christian Harris, but it seems like he's one of those guys struggles in zone coverage. Maybe the instincts aren't there. A lot of the knocks on Tremaine Edmonds are some of the knocks that you see on Christian Harris's scouting report. Kendall, have you seen enough Christian Harris to be able to speak to that at all?
No, he's someone I actually haven't watched at all, but I'm reading it now. And Jeff Dean is someone I respect a lot at SIS. And something that you just said that lined up perfectly is his zone instincts are suspect as he tends to cover grass instead of finding the crosser. So he's not, he's spot dropping in
Rashad
zone.
Perriman.
He's dropping back and instead of looking and finding the guy who's crossing, he's just dropping to his spot, and he's not worried about who's coming into the zone and pattern matching with that guy in the zone and kind of converting it into man. He's just finding his zone and he's just waiting. So that's definitely something that's concerning, especially in the Bills defense. You want a guy that can pattern match a little bit better than that, but he's also a little bit undersized, and I think he projects a little bit better to weak side linebacker.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a slight concern, but I don't have enough on him in terms of film. Like I haven't watched him at all yet.
Speaking of size, Nakobe Dean, does his size concern you at all? Like, we're not looking for a Matt Milano replacement. We're looking for a possible Tremaine Edmonds replacement. At 5'11", 230, are you worried about that with Nakobe Dean, or is he so darn good where if maybe his size drops him into the top half of the second round and the Buffalo Bills either trade back and collect more assets, or trade up in the second and they find themselves in the beginning of the second round somewhere and Nakobe Dean's still there, is he the type of dude where like you could pull the trigger despite his lack of size just because he's so damn good at what he does?
My only concern about his size is more, do the Bills have a concern with his size? Like, is him being sub 6 feet not meeting some sort of prerequisite to play Mike linebacker in the Bills system? And if that's real, then that's my concern. In terms of who he is as a player, like, no, he's good enough. Like, he's a good player. He's a great player. My biggest concern is how he fits the Bills scheme. And he's such a great blitzing linebacker, and the Bills don't ask their linebackers to blitz. I'm worried you're leaving one of his greatest strengths on the table and you're just not utilizing it. What Anthony and I used as an analogy is when you have a great center fielder and he's got great range to go and shag fly balls.
Yeah.
But you decide to play him at third base and you just take that speed and that range away from him. You don't even utilize that if you're playing third base. So that's kind of the analogy when you're talking about Nakobe Dean playing in the Bills defense at Mike linebacker. It doesn't perfectly fit. He's a great player, but you'd be leaving a lot of his strengths on the table and not being used.
Speaking of the other top dog, Devin Lloyd, Daniel Jeremiah during the combine, he did it. I know Anthony Prohaska, he has sung the praises of Devin Lloyd. Eric Turner has sung the praises of Devin Lloyd. Kendall, I know you really enjoy Devin Lloyd as well. I thought Daniel Jeremiah did a really good job sort of comparing Devin Lloyd's game to Fred Warner's game at the NFL Combine, comparing the tape, comparing the measurables, etc. So he's obviously the top dog. My biggest concern is Devin Lloyd goes to New England at pick 21. That's biggest fear.
Also my biggest fear.
Quay Walker is the other interesting one here. Obviously, Peter Schrager mocked Quay Walker to the Bills at pick 25. I personally think that's a reach. I think everyone here would agree that that's probably a reach. I think everyone would be more comfortable with him at 57 or him at a slight trade up. But I think Quay Walker makes maybe the most sense of all of these linebackers, because if you look at a guy like Quay Walker, here's the SIS write-up for a guy who's 6'4", 241 pounds. Walker's ability to defend the run and play in zone coverage make him an intriguing prospect at his size and athletic profile. If he can continue to improve his instincts, he has the potential to be a high-level starter at the next level. That's almost verbatim, probably the scouting report and the write-up that you would have read for Tremaine Edmonds when he came out of Virginia Tech. Quay Walker literally looks like a natural fit if the Buffalo Bills were literally looking to insert a Tremaine Edmonds type of player into this defense if they were trying to push a guy like Tremaine Edmonds out. Can you speak to Quay Walker's game a little bit? Have you seen enough tape on him?
Yeah, I love Quay Walker. I think he is the best fit linebacker at the highest caliber pick. I think he fits perfectly. He makes the most sense. Good size, good against the run, really disciplined when it comes to run fits. Like, I'm talking very similar to Tremaine Edmonds in the way he fits the run, where he's not going to scream downhill through the gap and allows something to open up. He's very, very disciplined to make sure that he's feeding to his teammates. And if the ball does come his way, he's very stout at the point of attack when it comes to tackling the ball carrier. Pretty sure he's like second in terms of draft eligible linebackers second lowest in missed tackle percentage. So that's something you should love to hear about a linebacker. But out of the 2 linebackers at Georgia, he was the one who is asked to pattern match and drop into zone the most. Nakobe Dean would do it, but he would do it more in a role where he's picking up a running back who's leaking out of the backfield, a la like a Matt Milano. It was more of Quay Walker who was playing that true Mike role, even though he wasn't necessarily like aligning that way all the time. But he was the one doing more of those Mike type of responsibilities that translates to the Buffalo Bills. So I love Quay Walker and his fit for the Buffalo Bills. He's someone who also has good blitz production, but it's not as much as Nakobe Dean. And you're not leaving it on the table, so to speak, because there's other strengths to his game that fit the Bills so perfectly. So I hated that who was it? Schrager drafted him at 25 over Kyler Gordon and Andrew Booth. But I do think Quay Walker will be going far, far earlier than we all expect, because I think he is the best true Mike linebacker in this draft. Because Devin Lloyd,
would you take him at 57 if he's there?
I would definitely think about it. If he's there, it would definitely depend on the people available. I would definitely think about it. But the thing with I think he's the best true Mike linebacker in this draft, because Devin Lloyd would be great at Mike linebacker, but you kind of want him to run around free to make plays. So he would probably be best at will, where he can just go ahead and make plays, not kind of worry about all that feeding to his teammates type of stuff and those responsibilities.
One of the things that a couple of people have pointed out, where they're like, yeah, I really enjoyed the Senior Bowl. I've really enjoyed the Combine. You know, what I like most about it is it's let some of these Georgia guys come out of their shell and sort of be noticed more. And 2 of the guys are Channing Tindall and Quay Walker. Are you at all concerned that they were playing on a defense that was loaded along the defensive front? Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt. We haven't even talked about Devin Carter, who's draft eligible next year, who might be the best out of all of them. And Trayvon Walker, like all those guys up front. Like, are you worried that the defensive line made those dudes, and do you think they're going to have trouble adjusting to life in the NFL when their defensive line might be worse than the defensive line they played in front of in college?
So it's definitely a piece of the puzzle, but when you watch the tape, you still see him doing his 111th, and that's really the key of what you're looking for with a Mike linebacker. You want to make sure he's taking care of his responsibilities. That being said, it's easier to take care of your responsibilities when you know the other 10 guys are doing it because they're NFL caliber players playing at the college level. But when you talk about moving to the next level, everyone should be doing their job. They're professionals now. You know, people aren't going to make those kind of mistakes. Is he going to have a Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis right there in front of him where he can feel confident in his run fits and he doesn't have to second guess himself about staying so patient? Maybe a little bit more, but you think about putting him behind Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones, I don't get worried about it. It might be a step back relative to the level of play, but I don't get worried about it. And I think that's the prevailing thought.
All right. Taking a look here at, some of the other linebackers, Darren Beaver seems to be the one that we haven't too much talked about. Any of you guys have any comments on Darren Beavers just quickly before we move on? Obviously he's another probably Mike guy, but he's also got some pass rush skill sets, right?
Yeah, I love Darren Beavers. I just don't know if he fits the Bills because of the unique defense that the Bearcats played. They played like a 3-3-5 defense, and he didn't necessarily play Mike for them. He would play, I guess, Sam in a sense. He would play Sam linebacker, and he would rush off the edge on blitzes. He could drop into coverage and stick with people. He's super, super athletic, but he can sometimes get that overzealous feeling where he just wants to go up and blow up a play, and he kind of leaves his run gap and leaves the defense vulnerable. So because of the complete scheme overhaul that he would be going into, coming from a 3-3-5 into a 4-2-5, I think it might be a little bit steep. And you'd be leaving, if you're the Bills, you'd be leaving that blitz potential and that pass rushing potential on the table if you draft a guy like Darren Beavers. Love his skill set, not totally sold he could fit the Bills, or that he will fit the Bills and the Bills see him as a proper fit. I think he can, but I don't know if the Bills want to take that leap of faith.
Looking now, 4th, 5th round. Again, like I said, just a numbers game. I dropped these guys into the 4th, 5th round. These first 3 guys, Brandon Smith, Channing Tindall, Brian Asamoah, but it would not surprise me if they went sooner. Jojo Doman is a guy who I think injuries will drop him back a little bit. But a lot of these guys, Terrell Bernard, Jojo Doman, Brandon Smith, Channing Tindall, Brian Asamoah, all very good players, off-ball linebackers, which is sort of not probably what the Bills are looking for. You got sort of like a unicorn type of player that I want to talk about in a little bit. Jesse Lucetta sort of gives you some like Lorenzo Alexander vibes. DeMarco Jackson from App State, I think, is an absolute sleeper. A guy who's played a ton of special teams reps in college, as well as obviously started on defense there at App State in the middle. Damone Clark is having that spinal fusion surgery. He's going to miss the whole season. He was probably a 2nd or 3rd round pick, but again, another Mike linebacker and a guy you could redshirt if you plan on burning and churning a guy like Tremaine Edmonds. Heading into the 6th, 7th round range, you got Jack Sanborn from Wisconsin. I think he's sort of that typical Wisconsin linebacker, a little bit of a stiff athlete. Mike Rose from Iowa State. Micah McFadden, a guy I'm very high on from the University of Indiana. I know a couple of you guys are as well. Another guy I'm super high on, Nefi Sewell from Utah. My no matter what, Malcolm Rodriguez out of Oklahoma State. But again, off the ball linebacker, Ellis Brooks from Penn State, Chance Campbell, who tested really well from Ole Miss, Nate Landman from Colorado, Jeremiah Gemmel from UNC, another guy who he played middle linebacker. He's probably more of an off the ball linebacker. Aaron Hansford from Texas A&M, sort of following the footsteps of Tyrell Dotson, a late round linebacker there at A&M. Carson Wells is a guy I think has probably tested himself into the draft. Another Colorado guy, and another guy who he earned his way into the Senior Bowl late. And, he did not get a combine invite, but a lot of people have been bouncing this name around. Kyron Johnson from University of Kansas as well. And then obviously with a position as deep as linebacker, there's going to be a plenty of UDFAs who could possibly be drafted. Joshua Ross from Michigan, Merlin Roberson and Darian Butler from ASU, Zacoby McClain from Auburn, Isaiah Graham Mobley from BC. These are all guys who had combine invites. Jake Hansen from Illinois, Braylon Spector from Clemson. James Houston is the FCS product from Jackson State with Deion Sanders. Mark Robinson from Mississippi State, Grant Morgan from Arkansas, James Skalski from Clemson, Gaddafi Wright from University of Buffalo, Teddy Gallagher, Silas Kelly from Coastal Carolina, who the Bills have looked into. We know that they scouted a little bit. And then you obviously got former safety, a guy I know our guy Otto is big on, and that's Luke Masterson from Wake Forest as well. So, I mean, there are just dozens of names to choose here as we look later on in the draft. Kendall, I'm going to start with you. Like, any dudes late in this draft that you maybe see as like a Mike fit? Like, is Damone Clark the one tickling your fancy, redshirting him, or is there anyone else later on in this draft that would interest you?
I like the idea of the red shirt with Damone Clark, as we literally did it on Monday in the mock draft. I think it makes a lot of sense if you don't want to like trade Edmonds now and you kind of want to hedge your bets that way. Because he is a good player on tape. He shows a lot of good instincts and football intelligence, especially pre-snap, getting his guys all lined up correctly. But obviously there's concern with obviously spinal injury. That's a big thing. So who knows if the Bills would actually do that. In the 4th, 5th round, I have some intrigue in Brandon Smith. There's some inconsistencies to his game. Athletic freak, but he doesn't really play like it on tape. Kind of someone who doesn't always trust what his eyes see. He's a little bit slow to go ahead and play downhill and make a play. So he has the athleticism to play in coverage and do everything he has to do and run, but there's just some inconsistencies there where it kind of left me moving on to the next guy to watch tape. He wasn't super exciting outside of his RAS score. So if he's there in the 5th round, I'd love the Bills to take a chance on him. I think it makes a lot of sense to take a chance on a guy with those kind of traits in the 5th round. If they do it in the 4th round, I wouldn't be upset, but I think it makes more sense to take a chance on traits in the 5th round on a guy like that. Micah McFadden, though, is my late round guy that I'm definitely intrigued with. He plays in a similar fashion to a Matt Milano, where he kind of gets downhill and he's very energetic and really likes going for those hits when sometimes he doesn't have to. He'll leave run gaps sometimes. He misses a lot of tackles, but he's got a lot of athleticism. He's got a lot of range, and he's got the ability to carry people up the seam. He can stick with people in coverage. He's just got a nice body of work that you can work with and kind of polish off those rough edges, because they are rough, but he's got all the traits to succeed at the next level. It's a little bit shorter and not exactly stout at the point of attack. So you'd like to see that grow, but hey, if he gets in the Bill strength and conditioning room, he has athleticism to lose and weight to gain. So I think he'd be perfectly fine in that regard. If he added 5 to 10 pounds, I think he's got the athleticism to lose. So those are probably the late round guys I'd be targeting that I think have possible Mike futures in the NFL.
Dave, how about you? Who sticks out to you sort of in the back half? And I can put this graphic up if you need it. These last half of the draft, I mean, looking 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, who sticks out to you from this group here?
Yeah, I mean, you guys mentioned Damone Clark as a possible redshirt candidate. I mean, I potentially like that idea, right? Because then it allows you to not really lose out on Tremaine Edmonds in 2022. There's still a risk, obviously, that he's not going to come back. Like it's a crazy surgery, right? I mean, it's spinal fusion surgery. I mean, we were talking about Tiger Woods earlier, right? He had the back fusion surgery to play golf, and it was like a miracle that he came back to play golf, right? So now we're talking about football. So it's scary, right? But is it worth the risk when, like, maybe with one of your 2 6th-round picks, it might be. It might be worth the risk, because we know those are, hit or miss picks as they are anyway. I like Jack Sanborn maybe more than some others. He was the 14th rated linebacker per PFF last year. Lot of experience, right? And he's been a centerpiece of that Wisconsin, that defense, right? So it just feels like he would be a natural professional. But I'll tell you the one guy that, out of all these guys on this list, like the one guy that really, really intrigues me as a late rounder is Chance Campbell from Ole Miss. He's a Maryland transfer. He's just under 6'3", and he's like 235, 240. So he's a little small to be a Mike, but he did play in the middle at Ole Miss. Wrapped up his only season at Ole Miss last year with 109 tackles, 12.5 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks. On top of that, 9.68 RAS, right? So he's a great athlete on top of that. He wasn't scouted, I guess, by SIS. I didn't see him rated rated by SIS, but TDN does speak of the scouting report from TDN does report that he's a sufficient athlete as both a run defender and in coverage, given his athletic testing numbers, given his ability to transfer from Maryland and really put up that solid season for Ole Miss in the middle there. I like Chance Campbell. I think he's going to be a nice option for someone late. And the other guy that we haven't really talked about in depth that I've mentioned previously is Mike Rose from Iowa State. So Kendall, how you describe Micah McFadden is kind of how I would describe Mike Rose as well. I think they're very similar players, rangy, athletic, maybe need some help and work against the run, which is kind of interesting for guys of their size, right? You wouldn't think that they would need to improve against the run because they're bigger Mike style linebackers, but that was the scouting report that they, especially for Rose, that he struggled against run. He had 5 interceptions as a linebacker in 2020, which is crazy to me. Yeah. So, and again, tested well. I think he was like over a 9 RAS athletically. So Mike Rose, Chance Campbell, those are probably my 2 favorite late round, like Mike style linebackers for me.
All right. I got 3 guys. I'm going to start with number 1, the only Mike I have on my list, because I went off. I got 4 guys. Only one of them is Mike, though, because I am just like have an unhealthy obsession with off-ball linebackers. I could sit here and talk about JoJo Domann for 20 minutes, but I'm not going to. And we'll skip over a guy like JoJo Domann just because he's probably not a fit, because to me, whoever drafts JoJo Domann is getting a Matt Milano type of player in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round of this draft. Brian Asamoah as well. I think you're getting
I like Asamoah. Yeah.
DeMarco Jackson from Appalachian State, 6'1",
Mhm.
233 pounds. This is the SAS write-up for DeMarco Jackson. He's got the leadership instincts and tackling skills to make big plays within the box, plus the natural athleticism to developing coverage, but he'll need to refine his technique in most areas to see consistent playing time. So he's just a toolsy Mike type of linebacker.
He's their number
He's
5 ranked Mike.
yeah,
SIS.
300, over 300, I believe, special team snaps in his career. I was having a conversation with Eric Turner. He's got the Eric Turner stamp of approval as one of his favorite linebackers in this draft as well. So big fan of DeMarco Jackson. I guess if I want to throw another Mike in there, Aaron Hansford from Texas A&M,
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
SIS
him
write-up, 6'2", 240, 6-year senior, so an older prospect.
Mhm.
Hansford is a difference maker in the run game and has upside in coverage and as a blitzer, but his instincts will need to greatly improve if he's to see time as a consistent starter. So I think he could be a Tyrell Dodson type of player later on in this draft. But in terms of off the ball linebackers, I've always been a huge fan of Jeremiah Gemmel from North Carolina, 6'1", 230 pounds. I think he would be a really good depth linebacker later on in this draft. Nephi Sewell from the University of Utah, former safety, really comfortable in coverage. I think he's gonna have to bulk up, 6', 226. He comes from the Penei Sewell, the Noah Sewell family. I guess he's kind of the black sheep because he's the only one who's not going to be a top 10 pick. But he's got the bloodlines there late. I really like Nephi Sewell. And then I'm going to have to, speaking of Jessica Tensas, I'm just in stalker mode. Like, this is my number one favorite player in this draft. And I know David Foe from the podcast that is on before us, the Cover One Roundup on Mondays, he's going to agree with me here. And that is Malcolm Rodriguez from Oregon State University, 5'11", 232 pound, fifth year senior, team captain at Oklahoma State. This is a player that when Sean McDermott reads his scouting report, he's going to absolutely fall in love with. He would be, to me, an ideal 6th or 7th round draft pick. He would immediately replace Tyler Matakevich, I think. And you could save the money off of Tyler Matakevich's contract. He'd be just an absolute special teams demon. His size probably precludes him from being a starter, but if someone gets hurt, he's got the instincts and the intangibles to come on the field and spot start for 3, 4, 5 games at a time. I really do think Malcolm Rodriguez is going to be in this league for a very long time. Some of the things that I've, sort of uncovered in looking up Malcolm Rodriguez: high school wrestling, 2-time state champ, moved from safety to linebacker, 4-year starter at Oklahoma State, 3,000 plus defensive snaps, 500 plus special team snaps, 300 plus tackles, 7 forced fumbles. His entire career, these 3,500 plus snaps, 3 penalties committed. He tied with Devin Lloyd at 25 for the most tackles for loss or no gain among Power 5 linebackers last season, and beating Noah Sewell by like 100 snaps. He had the most coverage snaps without allowing a touchdown among linebackers last season. Noah Sewell, brother of Nephi Sewell, future first round top 10 pick, most likely. A number of draft prognosticators talked about how Malcolm Rodriguez really stuck out during the linebacker drills of the combine and how fluid and twitchy he looked. And then on top of all of this, you heard all these different things I'm saying. I'm like, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. This motherfucker at 5'11", 232 pounds. You know what he goes and does at his pro day? 36 reps on the bench at 225 pounds. Malcolm Rodriguez is my favorite player in this draft by a country mile. If the Buffalo Bills draft him, I will probably take my shirt off in the middle of our draft coverage and run around the studio here. This dude is my dude in this draft. I know he doesn't exactly fill the replacing Tremaine Edmonds role, but I really do like him as a depth linebacker and a guy who could be on this football team for a very, very long time. So I'm off my pedestal now.
I guess he's on your no matter what list then. Huh?
Oh, 100%. He's my guy.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just not even.
Headlining it.
Headlining it. Yep. And Jason Taylor comes in and says, I just got the show in our rating. I think we also lost about 20 viewers over the past 5 minutes. So, yeah, I dropped one of those. Anyway, any final thoughts on linebackers here?
I was actually like, I'll say this. I was like not particularly excited to research linebacker, but as I was doing it, I was like getting more excited.
So it happens every time with the position. It's a fun position to scout.
I just found myself like it's a fun position to research. I found myself really like enjoying it, and like when I uncovered Chance Campbell, I was like, wow, this dude's pretty sweet. And like,
yeah, he's on my queue. I'm glad you said good stuff about him. He's on my queue.
Yeah, and there's just so many guys like Steve was showing on the graphic that like you end up honing in on a few, right, that you really like, but it's like you find out and you notice trends, like you notice that like, and you notice trends too about scouting sites too. When you start like Judge, you talking about how you always like look at different sites and kind of cobble things together. You notice trends like with SIS, all their Mike backers, they pretty much were like, they need help in coverage. All their will backers, pretty much, they need help in run. Like it's just like, all right, so let's just like take all that out of the equation and what's the rest of it, and tell me what they're good at, right? So just interesting seeing all that stuff and seeing how differences of opinion on all these different places. So like, especially like Jackson is a guy from App State who, you know, SIS is really high on, and others maybe are not.
So Ombre Lob comes in and says the viewers will go back up if you do a mock. I know we've already been going for an hour 45, but do we have a quick mock draft in us this evening? Do we got it? Do we got a quick mock in us?
I'm game if you guys are. We could also make a rule for safety and linebacker.
Well, I'm coming in. This is my rule. This is the rule that I'm proposing. That we will make an honest attempt to draft a linebacker and a safety. In the first 4 rounds. But it's an honest attempt. We don't have to do it if the value isn't there. So we will at each round, probably starting in round 2, take a legitimate look at the linebackers, at the safety, who's available, who the Bills talk to, who the Bills been linked to, and we will make an honest attempt to draft a linebacker and a safety in the first 4 rounds, but we also won't guarantee it. And I won't.
Are we guaranteeing that we take one of each though in the draft?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with that. I like that.
All right. So let's get this simulator up and running. The draft is already going. Oh, no Malik Willis to Detroit. That's the last like 10 simulations I've done. A lot too. Have done that. So getting a call. Green Bay wants to move up. There's probably a wide receiver on the board that they want.
That's not a bad trade.
Oh, no, not at all. And
same with that one.
Same with the Bengals.
So that one you get 136. This pick you get one. I mean, Green Bay's trade's way better.
Yeah.
I'm okay with taking that.
Yeah.
I don't think it changes much.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, it looks to me like my guess is Chris Olave still on the board. And my guess is if you trade this pick to Green Bay, they're taking Olave.
Taking Olave, yeah.
But
I mean, I think it's I like the trade, right?
Yeah.
Should we do it? Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
Let's do it. And let me I always do this little trick.
You pause right after to make sure.
Yeah. All right. Let me just.
We got trade offers here now on this other pick.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know if we need that many picks.
No. I mean, I think at this point we'll probably stay put. Right?
Another 4th rounder from Seattle there, dropping back to 40. We could take a linebacker and a safety in round 4.
That's the thing about trading back. I was like, hey, if we trade back enough, I feel good about taking a safety and a linebacker early.
Because Seattle probably wants a quarterback. I wouldn't mind taking that Seattle deal.
But this deal with I mean, you get a 4th here, pick 109. Yeah. Here you get a 4th 107. You only drop to pick.
Who's
37.
that trade with?
Houston. This is a way better trade offer.
Yeah, I would pull the trigger. I would do it. Why not?
If you guys want to, I'm okay with it.
Moving on back. 5th round. Now we're move back up into round 1. Get that 5th year option. Take Breece Hall.
Let's see who's available. Okay, Kobe Dean, Quay Walker is available. Brisker.
Lewis Cine is available. Yo, we could pull like in the first 2 picks, we could just pull like Lewis Cine and Quay Walker and then just draft like a bunch of other guys in like the 2nd and 3rd round.
I don't know. Do you guys want to move back up? Is anyone here really tickling your fancy to move up?
I'm legitimately interested in using our first 2 picks on Lewis Cine and like Quay Walker. And then just going from there because and from there, like, see, like, because once we do that, like we still have a 3rd round pick to play with, 2 4th round picks to play with, a 5th round pick to play with. So it would be interesting. So do we want to make this move with the Bengals here? I think if we make this move with the Bengals here, that legitimately puts us, we could lose out on Scene or Quay Walker here if we don't make this move. What are we giving up? A 5th round pick?
Yep. We would not have any. We actually have 3 4th rounders right now, so we'd be giving up a 5th.
I would make that trade, move back up into the 5th round.
Well, here's a dilemma for you though.
Mm-hmm.
Jaquan Brisker sitting down there.
Yeah.
Would you actually use this pick on Quay Walker instead?
I would use it on Quay Walker and then wait for and see if maybe because Daxton Hill is still on the board. Oh shit, Daxton Hill is still on the board.
Yeah, I'd sit at our current pick and I would just see what falls to us because there's 3
Yeah.
safeties we like and there's
All right,
there's Quay
we're
Walker
sitting on it.
board.
We're sitting on it.
Sorry, Bengals. Not doing it. They're
Scene
seeing
goes,
Hill, Brisker.
goes, and Brisker goes. So we're taking Walker. If we want to do that, we're taking Walker.
If we want to do that, that's bullshit. Fuck you, you fucking.
I mean, that's not bad. I mean, I don't
My
mind.
bad. I
Like,
said I wouldn't swear.
or
Sky
Dean.
Moore is on the board. There was some rumored interest in Sky Moore,
I mean,
Quay
Kenneth
Walker,
Walker,
Nakobe Dean.
Kyler
Kyler
Gordon.
Gordon's still there. We did that last time though. We took Kyler Gordon last time. We should just take Quay Walker, honestly,
Let's
for
do it.
differentiation and thought
Are
experiment.
you good with that? What's
Yeah.
the comment section
Good.
saying? Because I don't have it up right now.
Everyone wants us to take a corner. We're gonna take a corner, but we're gonna.
Yeah.
I think we should go through this thought experiment.
Yeah, I mean,
think
look,
we should just see what happens.
We don't want every mock draft to be the same. okay?
Exactly.
Like every mock draft out there you see is the same 5 guys, everyone picking. So let's
The safety thing just really grinds my gears here.
That was tough. But that's how you're supposed to play the board. You play the numbers.
Only a 6th round pick to move back up to 48 here. This would be super interesting. You could grab a Kyler Gordon. You can grab a Sky Moore if he hasn't been
You grab Pete. You could grab Jalen Petrie.
Jalen Petrie or Sky Moore here. So Sky Moore.
I'd move.
Is Skylar Moore still available? Or no, never mind. Someone took Sky Moore. You got Petrie. You got Tariq Woolen. You got Breece Hall. You got Isaiah Spiller. You got even some guards and Sean Ryan, Jamari Salyer, Roger McCreary, Chad Muma. We already took Quay Walker. Never mind. There's some options here. What do you think, Kendall?
I would move back up to take Kyler Gordon, but it's also interesting because Roger McCreary is still on the board. So you could hope that he falls to you at 57. But I feel pretty good about moving what was it, a 5th round pick to go up and solidify.
I would also move up to take Kyler Gordon because I would be there's no guarantee that McCreary is going to get
exactly
to you at 57.
Plus, we got Brian Cook, the next Jordan Poyer, waiting for us in like the 3rd or the 4th round. So
this would be a 6th round pick.
Oh, it's a 6th round pick. Yeah, pull the trigger. Let's go get Kyler Gordon.
I mean, so what? We're taking advantage of the draft machine. Who cares? All right, we are on the clock and we are taking Kyler Gordon. Correct?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So we're rebuilding our defense here is essentially the sort of the situation that's playing out here. We're hedging our bets with Tremaine Edmonds, and we are, taking our CB2 in Kyler Gordon. So I like the way this is shaking out so far. What are you guys thinking in the next round here? Are we thinking offensive line? Think a wide receiver? Too early?
I'd like to get a running back. I'd like to get a
back?
running back, but we do seriously have to think about safety.
another 6th round pick to move up here.
Ooh,
Isaiah Spiller is on the board. Breece Hall is on the board.
Yeah,
Dylan
I'd be
Parham is on the
fine
board.
with moving up for one of those running backs. I'd be perfectly fine.
Yeah, let's change it up. I think we've taken Breece Hall a couple of times, so let's trade up and take Isaiah Spiller here. How's that sound to you guys?
I mean, that sounds good to me.
Yeah,
it's Kendall's RB1. So
hopefully Randy wasn't in the comment section tonight, so hopefully
hopefully I don't offend him.
And hope he doesn't come back and listen on demand and get him mad at us. But
he will.
All right, so now we head into the 4th round. My thoughts immediately go obviously to wide receiver, but also interior offensive line is a need. Oh boy, we can get back up into the 3rd round again for a 4th and a 5th. Who's on the board here, Dave? Dylan Parham. Oh, dude, did we pull the trigger on Dylan Parham here? I think
I don't hate it. I don't hate it.
Who are the wide receivers? I think we could wait. I think we should go ahead and take Parham if we're going to move up.
Alec Pierce is tempting because I've had this conversation before, and people look at me sideways. Like, there's no depth at boundary receiver for the Bills. Like, guys, you can like legitimately play on the outside. Isaiah Likely still on the board as well. The guy the Buffalo Bills have brought in for a pre-30 workout. But I mean, I would take Dylan Parham here, but like, we also got to remember, like, we're also not picking again until the 7th round if we make this deal. Oh no, we have more 4th round picks, don't we?
This is what we have right now. We have another 4th.
Oh yeah, pull that trigger. Go get Dylan Parham.
All right.
I think wide receiver and safety are the next 2 picks, and maybe you just try to find some vets along the offensive line.
That's interesting. So we went defense first 2, offense next 2. I kind of like how this is shaken out so far.
I'm very interested to see who the safety that's going to fall to us at this next pick is.
I really hope Brian Cook's still there. Nick Ross just went off the board. Cam Taylor-Brick just went off the board. I do think that Kobe Bryant has safety flags.
I personally don't see it just because I watched him all year at corner, but
Dean Belton just went off the board.
In a lot of ways, it can be easier to move to safety.
Ooh, Justin Schaefer. Oh, he already took a guard. Never mind. Alec Pierce.
And there
3
goes
picks.
Brian.
And Brian Cook. Oh.
JT Woods is out there.
JT Woods is the top safety on the board. I like JT Woods' fit. You're going to have to take him here if you want him. I like Junior Thomas later if the Bills want to maybe go for some trades.
I mean, we have 2 picks in the next 3.
Yeah. Go to wide receiver, see who's left at wide receiver.
Ooh, Velas
Jones. That's a guy who can play on the outside, right?
He can play inside and out.
Could if he had to. Could in a pinch.
So you think Velas is a slot guy?
I think he's more a slot guy. Yeah. I think he could play on the outside because he's got the speed and he showed a little bit of that release package.
I mean, you're getting a kick returner, you're getting a punt returner, you're getting an inside
and you got to pick
receiver.
You take him here because there's a chance Tennessee could take him, and then you just take whoever you want at 132.
Yeah,
that would be my.
I would pull the trigger here on Velas Jones.
Yeah, no, I'm good with Velas Jones. I'm just upset that Pierce and Cook just went back to back before us. That was really the
JT Woods. JT Woods.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Let's do it.
Pull that trigger. I like the dude. We're killing this draft season, man. Our last mock was good. I think this mock is good as well. I mean, we're checking boxes. We're checking boxes of getting talented football players. So I'm really digging. I'm really picking up what we've been putting down the last couple of shows here. Oh, DeMarco Jackson. Oh, we already took a linebacker.
I like that we're mixing it up though in the approach each of these. Like it's a different.
I think Parham might be the only overlap.
Yeah, but it's hard to pass on that. He fell way further than he should.
Yeah.
Oh,
I want to have a conversation.
Gordon fell too.
I want to have a conversation. Bellinger and Kohler just went off the board at tight end there. I want to have a conversation about offensive tackle when
we could give up the rest of our picks to move up right here.
We'll check who's at offensive tackle and tight end. I feel like those are the only 2 areas right now.
Ooh, Abinia. I like him.
And this is also I as they still on the board and DeLance are still on the board, I would pull the trigger on one of those 2.
Who?
Both the offensive tackles. Ezzy and
DeLance,
I think.
What about Goedeke? You don't like Goedeke, or you just think he's not going to be there?
I love Goedeke, but I think Goedeke is guard tackle, whereas I think Ezzy, played at Memphis, went to TCU, played at TCU. I think Ezzy, if you pull up his scouting report here, Dave, and you read some of the things in his scouting report, it's very Cromer-like. Right. So first of all, didn't play varsity football until the senior season due to a rule about foreign exchange students because he's from Nigeria. So he's sort of that ball of clay type of toolsy prospect the Buffalo Bills would be into. And then if you go and you sort of read it, his scheme tendencies would be a zone blocking scheme, offensive tackle. And then you go and you look at it and it says right at the end is what stuck out to me. Most notable on dart, counter, and inside zone blocking schemes when utilized as a puller or when climbing up to the second level, he displays the agility necessary to thrive in those type of run schemes. That stuck out to me as something that might really intrigue the Buffalo Bills about Abina Ezzy in that scouting report. And at 6'6", 327 pounds, he also, I think, fits the mold. Could be our Joseph Noteboom, to be honest. another TCU guy.
I took him in my last mock last week with one of my, I think it must have been one of my 6th or 7th round picks. I took him for those reasons exactly. I like him. I mean, obviously I mocked him, so we can give up both of our 7s to come up and get him here, or we keep
get a UDFA punter. You can get Ryan.
Yeah,
Stone
that was exactly my thought. Yeah. Punter and tight end is the only thing, but I think UDFAs wouldn't have a problem coming to Buffalo for chances to make the roster.
Literally trade every pick?
I think so.
We might have. We might not have had one original pick in this draft.
Maybe our 4th round.
I feel like the 130 pick was ours. That was it.
Yeah, that was it. We'll see. But I like this draft a lot.
Yeah,
very balanced, offense, defense. Right, you got 7 total guys. You've got 4 offense, 3 defense, but
guys that can make the team too.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this again. If we go to we traded our 1st round pick, but I mean, Quay Walker is a guy who would play the AJ Klein role in his 1st year and could be groomed to replace Tremaine Edmonds. You got Kyler Gordon, who is immediately your CB2. He's also a guy who can move around and play nickel as well. So say like a guy like Teron Johnson gets hurt, you could slide Kyler Gordon into the nickel, and you could start like maybe when Trey White's back, then a guy like Dane Jackson can move outside and step in and play the boundary. So you'd have Kyler on the inside and Dane and Trey on the inside. So it just gives you a little bit of flexibility there. Obviously, I'm not as high on Isaiah Spiller as some other guys, but he's your RB1, Kendall. He comes in right away, and he's our starting running back for the next 4 years. You got Dylan Parham, who would obviously probably take Roger Saffold's job a year from now. And he's obviously quality depth. I mean, we rotated through offensive linemen like crazy last season. You got Velus Jones, who comes in inside outside flex to add depth to this receiving core, and he's your kick and punt returner. You got JT Woods, who comes in and competes with Damar Hamlin and Jaquan Johnson and Josh Thomas to be that safety there. And I think he's got the traits to be a guy like you got JT Woods playing center field, and you got Damar Hamlin, who maybe plays that more like line of scrimmage role. Maybe you have your 2 safeties for the future in JT Woods and Damar. I mean, that's huge projection.
But it's still the theory is pure.
Yeah. And then you got Obinezi at the end there, a guy who offers you probably a little bit more athleticism than Tommy Doyle, and a guy who could step in if there was an injury and play there. And he's a guy you could move around, and he's got some tools you could play with there at offensive tackle. And we're lacking depth there. I mean, we only have 3 offensive tackles on our roster right now. So you need some bodies there at least to get you into training camp. So big fan of that draft. Let's make sure we screenshot that one too. And we'll let people sing our praises on social media again. I always like it when you post it on the social media and the people praise you. Finally getting back to see the comment section. So, Dilly Dallas says JT Woods, he's nasty. Appreciate that. He says, are you sure Kyler Gordon could start right away? Kendall, based on the work you've done on Kyler Gordon, he's a plug and play guy, right?
I mean, I think he is, but at the same token, I also want to get a vet, so you're not like throwing him into the deep end. He's someone that if he's taken in, what do we take him, 48 right there, you expect him to start right away. And I think he is more than capable of starting right away. He has all the athleticism in the world to do it. Very physical and run support, which we know the Bills love. So I think he can. It's just a matter of will he, and I think alleviating some of that pressure and giving him some veteran presence on or in that cornerback room will be very helpful to him in aiding him to start day one. So I love Kyler Gordon. Yeah.
All right. So that should just about do it for this evening here on the Air Raid Hour. We'll be back on Monday. Again, by chance pointed out earlier on in the show, Bills freed up some money with that Stefon Diggs extension. Maybe on Monday we're talking about that veteran cornerback that signs over the weekend. A couple of names sticking out there. Obviously, Joe Hayden playing golf with Von Miller. Maybe Von Miller's doing some recruiting for the Buffalo Bills. But yeah, it's the Poyer news is crazy. It's disheartening. I'm not letting it affect me the way I let Ryan Bates affect me. See, I learned my lessons for Ryan Bates. I didn't let the Stefon Diggs stuff bother me. It will all work itself out. I'm not going to let the Jordan Poyer stuff bother me, but
let Brandon Beane just take care of it.
Let Brandon Beane handle it. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are listening on audio form, like podcast version, Spotify, iTunes, whatever, not iTunes, Apple podcast, make sure you subscribe, hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, leave us a 5-star, always appreciated. If you are watching on demand, as always, kudos to you for making it this far. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section. We'll make sure to get to you over the weekend. Smash that like button if you're listening on demand as well, helps us with the algorithm. And hey, if you enjoyed any of your time here, smash that like button on your way out if you haven't already, and make sure you just share it with a friend, word of mouth, let them all know about the Air Raid Hour here on Monday and Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern time here on the Cover One Sports Network. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Are we having fun yet?